Okay, so now it's good.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is awesome to be here with you in another session with our female CASCOM Female Mentoring and Morale Program. I am Major Maribel Lee, and I'm actually the director of the CASCOM Female Mentoring and Morale Program. We are here in another amazing section. So we had originally announced that Colonel Ricardo Jones will be, and his wife, Amanda, will be with us today. However, due to family circumstances, they were unable to be here. Our thoughts and prayers are with Colonel Jones and Amanda as they navigate to their ordeal. Sheroes answer the call whenever they require. So we have asked our own Colonel Pritchard Brown and her husband, Eric Upthegrove, to take the spot and let us know how do they mentor as a team. FYI, if you didn't know, Colonel Pritchard Brown today had a change of command. So we know she had a full day, but she's here full of energy as she always is, to give us her ideas on mentoring as a team. We will also have the former First Sergeant for the Bravo Company 16th Ordnance Battalion, First Sergeant Juana Torres and her husband Arturo Torres to give us the idea. As usual, let's give praise to Almighty, and we will start today with Captain Mary Tang starting us with the prayer. Captain Tang.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Father. You have guided us through our lives and blessed us with the mentors along the way. Thank you for your encouragement and wisdom throughout the years and giving us the understanding heart and teachable spirit. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. And without further ado, Colonel Pritchard Brown.
Well, thank you so much, Mari. So everyone, just want to reemphasize what she just said. Mari is the director of the Fort Lee chapter of FMMP, so under CASCOM. But as you all know, and hopefully you've already heard and read some of the emails that we've had, FMMP has gone much outside of the CASCOM gates, and we are now being discussed at the Department of the Army and Department of Defense level. So I'm very proud to say that, and it started right here at CASCOM. And so I'm so honored, before we get started, to recognize a few people on the line. We have our Commanding General Simberly on the line. Sir, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We also have our special guests, who are always special guests, and they're my mothers in the military. So retired Lieutenant Generals Gwen Bingham and Kathleen Gainey on the line. Ladies, thank you so much. General Gainey's camera is not going to work, but she is right here and she can jump in and speak anytime tonight. But ladies, thank you all so much for joining us. And so as Mari said earlier, yes, we will always rise to the call of duty, and I'm going to always be on this call. But my better half, I call him my better half, decided to come on here with me because he said, hey, I'm right here. What do you need me to do? I said, well, babe, we need to be here together and help them understand what you deal with being my hubby, and then what I deal with being your wife as service members. But our story is a little unique. Well, I really can't say unique. So I was married 20 years. I got married in 1992 and got divorced in 2012. And for 8 years, I was a single mother. I got divorced. I figured I'd already made up in my mind, I'm not going to get married again. I'm in the military, and the military was my husband. That's how I saw it. I've got to be successful. I'm going to be a super mom and super soldier. So I'd already focused on being successful in my military career. Now, the 20 years I was married, I was going through the military with a spouse. I deployed. I stayed home. I was a soldier, and my children were raised in the military. And so the reason we're bringing this message to you this evening, along with the one we did the first time, is to tell you some of the challenges that spouses face, as well as the service members who have families that they have to juggle their military careers. And he has his own story about how he was in the military, and he's a retired E7, and I'll let him speak for himself. You want to introduce yourself, Hank?
How's everybody doing? My name is Eric Upthegrove. I know everybody gets that last name messed up, but I did 21 years in the Army. I was a sergeant first class. I was stationed several different places. This actually happened to be my last duty station. Just like Dia, I was married for 20 plus years, and my wife passed away a few years back. And just like her, in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna get married again. And, we found each other.
Mhm.
And you'd be surprised that somebody's out there for everybody.
And so the reason we bring you that message is because it's important for people to understand there's going to be challenges in your life. If your spouse is on here, if you are a married couple, you're going to learn that if it doesn't work out, let's say it doesn't work out as a soldier, you're married, and that relationship is not going to continue down the road. One of the biggest things that both my ex-husband and I had to realize is in order for us to have productive children that are going to be raised, I'm staying in the military, but what do I need? I need that support system. So even though we got divorced, we were still in each other's lives. And so we had to understand that we have to be a supportive system for each other. And the reason I take that time to tell you this is because some of you out there, or some soldiers that you know, or civilians that you know, may be going through marriages and having challenges as they work in the government. We know that Army calls for us to do a lot of things. They call for us 24 hours a day. I think last night I went to bed at what, 3 o'clock, prepping for my change of command to this morning. And so that's a balance that I not only have to take on myself, but my spouse has to understand along with my children. If we're committed to this, we have to be understanding and resilient. And so the reason we chose to tell you all about our previous marriages and are going to give you more opportunities to talk more about it is because people think when you get married, that's the end all be all. You'll be together forever. And if it doesn't work, life is you're devastated now and life ends. And it doesn't. What it does is it calls for you to step back, look at the situation in its totality. Maybe you two weren't meant for each other. Maybe you two were together at one time for a certain amount of time, and then you grew apart. We all grow and mature differently. And so I say that because I got married, I think I was 22 and 92. And when I got married, I was a young Pritchard Brown. I wasn't the older 52-year-old that I am now and knew of things about life. And so with understanding who I was then to where I am now, my ex-husband and I have a great relationship. As a matter of fact, my current husband and my ex-husband have a great relationship because my ex-husband and I have to be partners in parenting because it's about our children. Just like we talk about, it's about our soldiers. What's about our children that's going to be productive citizens in society? And so we don't want them to feel that the military caused our relationship to break up. We don't want them to feel the stressors of what mom's choice of military career is versus dad's choice. My ex-husband was military. He actually got out on the medical the year we got married. And I'll let Eric talk about his deceased wife, but she was military as well. And so understanding that the reason we're bringing this to you all, because we don't want to sugarcoat life in the military with a spouse. It's hard. It can be very hard because the challenges are, how do I support my spouse who's chosen this career when I don't think the Army cares about me as the spouse, because we have spouses that have to say goodbye to the family member, the service member, and be the sole provider, sole everything, mom, warden, a parole officer, everything to the child, while the service member is off serving their country. For those of you that have been deployed, you remember those days when it was important for us to learn to teach the spouse how to manage a checkbook. I remember many times soldiers left and deployed, but didn't leave the spouse the checkbook to understand how to even write a check or pay bills. So they were dependent on those people or the service member to help them survive. We've learned from that years ago. We've learned how to make sure the families were taken care of before deployments. We've learned, luckily we're not in a deployment officially with Iraq and Afghanistan. I won't even talk about, I'm not going to talk about Ukraine or any of that. That's just not a subject. We're going to talk about what's going on. But the key is we've learned from the challenges that we experienced years ago where families were left when the soldier departed. We teach the family members how to care for themselves, where to go. That's why it's so important for our family readiness groups, our SFRGs now. Soldier family readiness groups rely on the members to come together and help each other. And it is key that the spouses and the service members work together in that. And so I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about life as a husband who had his wife, both of them were military. I was actually, my ex-husband was out of the military when we got married, well, was getting out of the military when we got married, but he and his wife, deceased wife, were in the military together.
Yeah, so when I got married, I think it was back in 95, I was actually a single parent. I had 2 daughters and I was taking care of them for like 3 or 4 years. And then I had met Marilyn, and she was in the military. And it's a sort of opposite of what happened with you. She got out after a year of us being married. So she basically had to do what I'm doing right now, doing the support role, making sure that I'm here and, helping with the kids and helping with everything in the house, still working, and I think it worked out pretty well. When I was married, spent a lot of time in Germany and things like that. And it was a little challenging, when you're married and your spouse gets out of the military, because a lot of it's unfortunately on you sometimes. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't do that with Dia. I wanted to make sure that I supported her, because I did my 21 years, retired, now I'm working DOD, and I'm very fine with if we have to move every 2 years, I'm good with that. She got to go to Afghanistan, I'm going. So
Well,
everything.
and it's important that people have to understand there has to be dialogue. You have to have that conversation. I will tell you, in the past, a lot of people assume that if there were dual military family members, and I can't wait for Juana to talk to you, Torres First Arm, she's gonna always be my First Arm Torres, and her husband Arturo will talk to you about their relationship, because she's still active duty and he's the support system, just like my husband is. And before, years ago, there were roles, unwritten roles for people. So if there were there was a military dual family members, the automatic assumption was that the wife was going to get out of the military because the man's career was more important. Well, again, the Army has learned, with the fact that we're doing people first, and luckily this came before people first, where we have to realize you have to encourage whoever wants to stay in the military. It has to be a dialogue that's had at home. But that's for anything. You have to have that communication at home. You have to have those hard conversations, and they may not turn out great. Of course, people have to go to their corners, cool off, take some time, leave, go punch a bush, shake a bush. Don't shake pets, don't shake animals. Take a bush, an innocent bush outside, it doesn't scream. And then calm down, come back, and then listen to what the other person is saying. And understand, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. If you all don't know that book, the purpose of me saying that is because we're all come from different sides. We all have different thoughts. We were raised differently. And so understanding that everyone is raised, I tell people, if you went to school, you got your degrees, you didn't grow up to be a housewife, because you have all these degrees. You have all of this knowledge. You want to go out and be productive. Now, if you choose to be a housewife, absolutely, go enjoy. But it shouldn't be an automatic assumption that that's what the woman is going to do. And so when you find a man that is forward thinking, that says, hey, you make more money than me, or your career is on a trajectory that is out of this world, let's do it together. And let's means let us do this together, because it is a partnership that you have to have. It is a dialogue that you have to have and continue to have, because times may change. I will tell you, the reason I got divorced is because it changed. It was, hey, I want you to get out of the military now because I'm tired of moving around. Well, if I had gotten out of the military, and I actually considered getting out of the military, I'm like, well, I have to stay married. I want to stay married, so I've got to get out of the military. What that would have caused is a lot of resentment. I would have resented him for making me get out of the military just so we could stay at home and live in a house with a white picket fence. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so that's where that dialogue comes in, because if you don't talk about it, and you keep it in, and then years later or something, that resentment is building and you don't get it out, then it can come back and it can cause a fracture in the relationship. My ex-husband and I ended up agreeing, look, I know I would rather us be friends and divorced and happy parents rather than miserable, upset, and resentful of each other as married parents to our children. Because your children, if you have any, or your friends, they will see it. And what happens with children, if you have children at home, and we're talking to the couples that have children, they see everything. Our pastor used to say, more is caught than taught. That means they'll catch it. They'll see us walking around unhappy. But if they see us walking around unhappy, they're going to think that that's a normal relationship. And then they repeat that cycle. So my ex-husband and I are great friends, and our kids see that. We sat them down and explained, look, here's where we are. Here's why we wanted to do this, because we want to show you that we can still be happy. My kids were never so happy when I fell in love again. Of course, after 8 years of being a single parent, I had to be retrained on how to be a wife. I had to really sit back and say, wait a minute, I can open my own car door. Wait, that's right. He wants to open the car door for me. Let me let him open the car door. Little things that you have to retrain yourself on to understand. Now I've got someone in my life. I'm not the 23-year-old or the 33-year-old or the 43-year-old. Oh, I don't want to go up anymore. But I'm not that person anymore. And I've grown, and I have to help him understand who I am. And then he has to help me understand who he is. And that's in any relationship. If you're boyfriend or girlfriend, if you're husband and wife, the key is the dialogue that you have to have. And that is the biggest message I want to have this evening for you. And I know Eric and I were talking about, what is the takeaway? Communication, good, bad, or indifferent, easy or hard, you have to talk things through. Because if you don't, someone is going to resent the other one, and that will cause a fracture. And it will fester. It will fester. And if you don't address it right away, that festering will turn into the smallest little thing, will cause you to pop off. And next thing you know, you're mad at each other for the next 10 days or a week or so. So we have a habit of, we make it a point to sit down and say, okay, let me tell you what's bothering me. Now, I may not go over right the first time, but when we walk away from each other, come back and talk and say, okay, now let me hear what you were saying. And so that's the thing that I wanted to bring out to you. And I wanted him to tell you an experience that he had when he was training young soldiers about females. It's something that I think, the can and the,
Oh, yeah.
but I want him to tell you, as a man, as he was watching young female soldiers growing up, some of the things that he saw that helped impact him as a parent with his own daughters.
So I came in the Army in 1984. I went to AIT here. So I was patrolling supply specialist. So one of the things they did when you first came into AIT, the first week, they would take one of those 5-gallon buckets of oil, put a chair on top of the table, take that bucket, and they wanted you in one move, put it up there on top of the chair. So of course, we only actually had one female in our whole AIT class. So that was one of their ways of trying to weed people out. They couldn't do that. So then when I get to my first duty station, I'm actually in a POL company. It's about 300 of us that everybody's foxtrots. But what they did with the females, because they didn't think that they could actually do some of the work, they would put them in the oily room and supply room, stuff like that. And I was like, in my mind, I said, when I'm in charge, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. So, fast forward to Fort Irwin, California. I was platoon sergeant. I was in charge of Op 4. And we had to, every time we went to the field, we didn't have enough soldiers to have 2 soldiers per vehicle. So what we would do, we would tie our nets up on top of the vehicle and the poles and all that stuff like that. And then everybody had to fend for themselves when you went out there to the field. So, that was something that we trained on to make sure everybody felt comfortable doing the same thing. And when you train somebody and show them and make sure that they feel comfortable and they know that they're going to be successful, I mean, it tends to work out. And that's exactly what happened, and matter of fact, I got a couple of them are first arms right now. So
when he first told me that story, I said, okay, yeah, you're a man after my own heart already, because if you saw a wrong, what they did is, as you're weeding out a group of people who are not meeting the standard, you're placing a burden or a standard on someone that's unfair. Of course, as we've changed and we're changing the culture of the military, whenever we see things like that as leaders or even as peers, we have to address it and call it out. That's also a communication thing, because if you see something that's wrong, you have to say something about it. See something, say something. And I'll tell you, the PFC in me years ago, and I think I said this last night at my farewell dinner, the PFC in me and the sergeant in me saw things that were like, wow, if I am ever in a position to make a difference, I will make sure that never happens again. Fast forward, I'm sitting here as a colonel. And the fact that I became a battalion commander and a brigade commander, the ability to sign a document or to pull people in and talk to them and address very uncomfortable conversations, very uncomfortable topics, but address it with the goal of fixing it, it has to happen. And because of that, when I saw those things that were happening that were wrong, I knew I needed to address them, but not only me addressing them, I had to talk to my peers. Did you see this? Well, yeah, I saw it. Well, did you say something about it? Well, no. Well, hey, who's your biggest support system that you can come home and get courage from? I come home every day and get courage from my husband. And I said it in my speech earlier today, there are times I've come home broken and shattered and did I do enough? Did I help out somebody? The challenges that happen in command, because we take the weight of wanting to care for you all, wanting to care for our soldiers. And we take it personally. You know, if a leader cares, we take it personally. We want you to succeed. By coming home and getting that courage, we leave back out the next day saying, I know one person's in my corner, so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to go tell the group of people that are doing something that is not right. I'm going to go tell them what's wrong. Now, there is tact. There is a way to tell people. It's not what you say, it's how you say it sometimes. So sometimes you have to present the situation and say, as a question, well, am I misunderstanding what's happening? Because this is what I see. What do you see? When you put it back in their court, sometimes they're like, wow, you know what? I kind of see the same thing. When he addressed and saw that the females were being weeded out because they could not take a can and put it of oil and put it on the top of the truck with just one hand, it was a physical barrier that they were being judged on, not their mental barrier. It was a physical barrier. Well, as you see, the military's grown. We have already changed the APFT to now the ACFT. We changed the ACFT again, looking at age and, you know, so we're growing. It's a learning organization, but it takes all of us here to help grow that organization and help it continue to change for the better for everyone. The key behind a relationship is, who do you have in your corner? Whether husband or wife, whether best friend, whether aunts, uncles, moms, sisters, somebody has to be in your corner that when you come home and don't have the energy to muster up the strength and the courage to go out the next day and do something about it, you can turn to someone to say, what can I do to make a difference the next day? Because what we don't want is for you to then let it fester in you and to where you now become unmotivated and end up just wanting to get out of the military. Clearly, you all can tell I love the military. My husband and I already told him, I said, well, babe, you know they're gonna have to kick me out, right? I mean, literally, I will be in a wheelchair. If they let me go to 45 or 55 or 65 or 75, you know, they're gonna have to roll me out.
Yeah, we'll be in wheelchairs together.
But the point is, while I'm in it, and while he's supporting me in it, because I technically consider him in it too, our families serve as well. The good thing is he already knows about the military. But while we're in it, what can we do to make it better? And as a couple, we go mentor. We provide that mentorship, but we talk the hard truths. We don't sugarcoat anything. We try to say, look, we have had our own times in the military where I almost didn't think I was going to continue on. But by the grace of God, by the grace of mentorship, by this awesome women that I've seen before me and the awesome men that I've seen in front of me that have come out and said, I will support you. What do you need? And when they say, call me, they mean call them. I've called the ladies on here that I told you earlier. I've called them, say, man, what do I do? Just let me bounce some stuff or what do you think? And then they let me make the decision, but they just help shape and guide me. But the men do too. General Simile, I mean, the number of people that are on here that have availed themselves to whoever needs that help, it's free knowledge. I tell people it's free. A signature is free. So as Colonel Pritchard Brown, I have the ability to sit down and say, okay, let's weigh the odds. If a soldier has an EFMP family member, the spouse is struggling with medical issues, but he's on orders to go to Korea and he's asking to be deleted from them. Do I really need that one soldier over in Korea? Or can I leave that soldier home to stay with his family so the family can stay together? I signed the deletion, let him stay. The Army will find another person to go fill his spot. But that soldier won't find another wife or child that he has to take care of and love the way he does. So those are where leaders have to come in and say, I can make a difference. And that's what our goal is for mentoring. And so providing that love and support to each other is what helps me go out every day and say, okay, I'm ready. Like I say, sometimes I come in, I just bury my head in his chest. I'm like, and he's like, you got this, you can do this. So that's what I wanted to bring to you all. I know we've got two awesome people waiting right now because I can't wait for you to hear their story. I already know their story. So I know I've master Sergeant Torres, although I'm still keep calling you first Sergeant Torres because you're always going to be my first sergeant. But thank you all for listening to us, and we're going to be ready to answer questions in a minute. But I want them to introduce themselves to you so they can give you a little bit of background too about themselves and their relationship. Juana, you want to take it over?
Yes. Hello, ma'am. First, I want to apologize. I wish I was there. Avoid your change of command. I was actually on my way to Fort Bragg. I left Fort Lee today. So I'm in PCS leave. My husband and I have been married for 16 years now. We met in Alaska. Where's my husband? He's somewhere in here. I don't even hear him. So we've been married 16 years. We have 3 kids. We were young PFC specials when we got married. And when we got married, it was more of, hey, you're going to Afghanistan, you're going to Iraq. And after that, the Army's going to separate us. So we're like, oh, he's going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to go PCS somewhere else. And we decided to get married. And we've been married ever since. We've gone through issues of fertility issues. I couldn't get pregnant for the longest time. I had 2 miscarriages when I was stationed at Fort Polk. And by the grace of God, now I have 3 kids, 3 boys that they are my everything. But being in the military, being dual military probably has to be one of the hardest things to come by. So whenever I was having my miscarriage, I was deciding to actually get out of the military so I could get fertility treatment so we could try to have kids. But my mom, my dad, and my husband's like, look, you like it, stay in. If it's going to happen for you to have kids, it's going to happen. God is going to give you kids. Decided to stay in. My husband actually got promoted twice before me. He made Sergeant E5 before I did, then made E6 before me. So I supported his career throughout that time when he was making NCO from E5 to E6. Once we both made E6, we were both E6s. I made the E7 list before he did. Then the following year he got promoted. And then the following year I made the E8 list and I finally pinned to first sergeant or master sergeant. And I turned around, I looked at him, I'm like, are you ready to support me in this? Because there's going to be late nights, there's going to be early mornings, there's going to be weekends that I'm going to be working. There's going to be time away from the family since my kids and my husband was always used to me being home and taking care of them, taking care of my husband, mentoring him, giving him guidance, giving him advice of what he should do. It was his turn to take that role. And I think that was probably the hardest time for him because now it's like, okay, she made E8. Now I have to step back and support her in her career and what she wants to do. And earlier this year, actually, we had a conversation about actually him retiring. So once he gets to Hawaii, he's going to serve his time in Hawaii. He's going to drop his retirement packet. And he's like, look, I'm ready to be the FRG leader. I'm ready to be the secretary. I'm ready to support you 100%. You do what you want to do. And me and the boys are here for you. And I'm glad I had that system. And like you and your husband, ma'am, there was times that I would come home crying, upset, saying like, did I do what I needed to do? Did I do enough? Like, I need help. And I would tell him the scenario and he's like, no, you did the right thing. Don't worry about it. He's very much of a tough love kind of person. And at times I need that because, there's times I overthink things because I always want to take care of people. At the end of the day, I work for my soldiers. I take care of them. I have to take care of them. They're somebody's kids. They're somebody's family. And he's like, babe, you did enough. You did well. You did what you needed to do. And he's like, but I would have done it this way. And I'm like, I didn't think about it like that. So he's one of the person that I could definitely trust his judgment and just trust for him to just give me that big hug and be like, you did great. Keep going what you're doing. Me and the boys are here. Just waiting for you. And whatever you need, we're here. So I appreciate all 4 of my boys and for everything that they did, especially throughout the last 2 years, through the COVID pandemic, through the soldiers and the cadre and everything else. They've been 100% at home. I come home, the house is clean. The only thing I have to do is cook. The house is completely clean. All I do is cook, and that's a little bit of what I have to do to make sure that I'm doing the good thing at home. I don't even know where he's at. Art.
Well, he is on here. I just want you to know he is here. You probably just don't see him on there, but we
Mhm.
see him right here, and he is poised and ready to talk whenever you're
I'm
ready.
here. Nope, I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Can y'all hear me? Okay,
Mhm.
great. Yeah, like you mentioned, you know, we were stationed in Alaska. We met over there. Originally, my MOS was 11 Bravo infantry guy, and so we had tough situations where we were always offset in field exercises and
Mhm.
deployment exercises. So eventually, we caught up in Iraq, and we met up in Iraq towards my end of my deployment when I got extended in being in Iraq, and so it was trouble at times because the time difference that she was over here and I was over there, and then she flew over there and then I was leaving. And so it created a lot of issues. And we were young, we were young. Luckily, we surpassed that and we moved forward from that. There was a lot of trust issues because we were young. We were still young. And so luckily, like I said, we passed that and we moved forward from it. And we had a lot of downtime. But luckily that when I came back from Iraq, I changed my voice because I had a hard talk with her due to being 11 Bravo. 11 Bravo takes a lot of time off of you from being in the family, and so one of the things she talked to me about it was, hey, you're from West Texas. It's all about oil field. Like your husband, ma'am, 92 Fox. She was like, why don't you do petroleum? Hey, you might land up in a good job out there in West Texas and with oil field and stuff. And hey, you just never know. And so she had multiple jobs open. And so she encouraged me to do that. And so I ended up being reclassing to a 92 Fox. But I will tell you that once I reclassed to the 92 Fox, it created a more stronger bond, because it wasn't it wasn't as much of a high impact or high work ethic in this side of the MOS. It's more mellow. You come in, you do your job, and you go home. In the infantry world, it's totally different. You're out there constantly shooting, practicing, doing all kinds of stuff, cool stuff. And I miss it. But I'm glad that she pointed that out to me, that to keep that strong bond. And then we moved forward, and then we deployed together on my second deployment, and then third deployment, deployed together to Afghanistan. And so that was one of the hardest things we could ever done, leaving our kids behind. And so with that being said, moving all their stuff down to Texas, because we're up in New York, Fort Drum. And so moving all their stuff back again to Texas for them to stay down there for the 9 months to a year. And so my kids, they didn't even know who I was when I walked into the door when we came back from deployment. And so those are things that, people captured. I captured a lot in seeing their face expressions where, who is this guy? And so it was very, very hard moment for the kids.
Yeah,
there were three.
Yeah, they were 3 years old, and 1 year old was our middle child now. And I think leaving there was the hardest. And I swear my husband pulled me to hey, let's go. We have to go. We were at the airport and I'm like, I don't want to go. Like, you know what? I just can't leave my kids. And he's like, we're good. They're in good hands. And obviously, thanks for the support system too with our families. We've been lucky, blessed, and to have a good support system. But they were 3 and 2. And that was probably the hardest part, leaving them. Now they're 12 and 10. But that was probably the hardest part with leaving them. And then it's funny because he talks about whenever we reclassed. So whenever he reclassed, we were stationed together in Fort Polk, the same unit, the same battalion. The only people that knew that we were that we were married was our first sergeant, our commander, and our platoon sergeants. Nobody else knew that we were together, that we were married. They just knew they had 2 Tauruses in a company. because we had another hard conversation like, hey, at work, it's professional. We ain't going to lunch. We're riding your car. I ride my car, and we just keep it like that. Because you never want people to say like, oh, they get favoritism because they're married or anything like that. And at that time, we were both sergeants, so they didn't even know we were married until the end. And that's how we keep it professional. They now throughout our career, they know, yeah, we're married to each other, and we try not to be in the same unit because we don't want to be in the same rotational cycle because of our kids. So if he's in the field, I'm not in the field. If I deploy, he's home. If he deploys, I'm home, just due to the kids. And we just have to have that communication. I think throughout the 16 years, that has been our strongest point, is just having that communication, the hardest communication, and even bringing our kids now that they're older, like, so they could understand. And they are so resilient. So it's one of those hard things too.
Luckily for us, those kids are, hey, we're ready to move. We're moving. They're very resilient. They're ready to rock and roll and then move forward from it. I know we had one problem with our middle child. He's very attached to their friends. So he was crying this lately. A couple nights ago, he was crying because he hates to leave. But it's one of the things that we keep telling them, if we're in the military, we have to know to adapt and overcome as we move forward. Now, like she said, she mentioned, I make the decision where she got promoted. That's when I said, you know what, it's time for me to hang the boots right this time, do my job, and then retire, because it's not fair it's not fair for her and for me and the boys to endure all this deployment and field exercises when one of us needs to be back home already. So she's I know she's gonna be great, and I'll be the FRG leader, and I'll support her 100%. But yes, it's time for me to stay back and take care of the kids, especially the little one that needs the more attention.
Yeah.
Well,
So throughout.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ma'am.
I was just go ahead. No, I was
right
just going to
now,
bring up something for you, and I'm glad you said that, because your 3-year-old and your 1-year-old are young. They don't know it. They don't know what they don't know yet. When they get into the teenage years, that's when that life is starting to happen. But we put more pressure on ourselves when we say goodbye to our little ones, and don't even realize that they don't know what we're experiencing. They're babies. They're like, look, just feed me, burp me, change me, and I'm good. Put me down to sleep. It's us that puts that on ourselves, but I totally get it because I was there. But I wanted to bring that out, that you all, when you grew and you saw them as resilient as they were, they're gonna, believe me, I just went through this again a few years back with daughter leaving home, went to Japan, cried, broke down, just did not want to leave her friends in North Carolina. We got to Japan. After 2 years, she didn't want to leave Japan. So the resiliency is still there. And thank God for technology. Just like we're doing now, they stay in touch with each other. But I'm sorry, you go on and finish talking.
No. So right now, the reason why he's not here with me, so I stay back with the boys, the 2 older boys. I couldn't take the boys out until actually today from school. So I stayed back and cleared the house, cleared everything, last minute things that we had still pending at Fort Lee. And he went forward to Texas to tend to our 20-acre property that we have over there. And I think I was talking to you about it, ma'am. We did an investment when we were 23, 24 years old. We bought 20 acres, just nothing on it. And we made an investment for our future. And now that's what he's tending. We built 3 houses out there for our kids. So now when the kids get older, they have something to go to, and my husband has something to do when he retires. So that's what he's doing over there right now in Texas, is tending to our 20 acres before we go to Texas.
Well, and here again, everything that you all are doing, and again, this goes back to our message tonight. When we talk about mentoring as a team, when we talk about how do you make it work, it's that communication, it's the agreeing, it's the not having set roles. It's understanding that in order for you all as a couple and as a family to be successful, you have to make those discussions that are for the good, not to break up. I will tell you, when I was in my first marriage counseling was the best thing I could have ever asked for, because we weren't seeing eye to eye. Now, we got divorced after marriage counseling. People are like, well, counseling didn't work. Well, it absolutely worked. It helped us determine that we didn't need to be married anymore. And so, but we needed an outside, unbiased source to help us understand and see whatever was happening between us. Because the two of you in a conversation, not you, Torres is, but anyone, but in a relationship, you're not going to see the other person's side as much as you see your side.
Mhm.
But a completely unbiased person sitting outside and listening, because that's the other thing, we don't listen. We're hearing, pick one thing, you heard one thing. You didn't hear the rest of the sentence, but you heard that one thing. Well, you think, and it completely derails the conversation. And I'm promoting counseling because I always want marriages to work. But at the same time, if it's not working and somebody else from the outside looking in says, hey, this isn't something that needs to continue, then that way you're understanding that, oh, it's not me, it's not him, it's just we're here. Now, there's of course other marriages that shouldn't work if you're putting hands on each other or doing drugs, things like that. So that's not even a relationship I'm thinking about. But I'm thinking about the two adults that are not seeing eye to eye. What do you do to make it work? And that becomes the conversations that have to happen. And we have soldiers in our formations right now that are struggling with their marriages. I have my own cases right now, and that I've had to come in, domestic violence. You know, you get to a point where somebody's teapot, the tea kettle blows, the whistle blows. You know, that means it's been boiling, it's boiling. Then all of a sudden somebody lays their hands on a spouse, male or female. And that's when we know we have not done what we needed to do, which is to pull aside, step away, and figure it out. But when you're in the fray, when you're in the middle of it, sometimes you don't see that until it's too late. And that's where that festering comes from. And so I appreciate you all telling us what you went through, the balance. It's a delicate balancing act. And we all have challenges at the beginning. That's called learning who we are and who the person is that we're 2-year newlyweds. So we just celebrated our 2nd year. We're still learning each other, you know, but we're not the 22-year-olds learning each other. We're the 52 and 57-year-olds learning each other. So understanding that we are already set in our lives and in our ways. You know, some people say, you know, it's hard to make a leopard change his spots, but it's not. It's called compromising. It's called paying attention and consciously making a decision to remember that the person doesn't like something about this. In your relationships, you have to tell that person what you don't like. In the military, they have to understand what your roles are. I tell people, young couples, as a young couple, don't get married if that spouse doesn't understand the military.
Yeah.
If they don't know what they're signing up for. Because as soon as they sign up, you take little Ann or little Bobby from hometown, and that's all they knew. And now they're off in Italy or Germany with no family members and no one to turn to. They are now stressed and alone, and they can start having mental and emotional issues and challenges that you're not going to be able to attend to if you're off doing an exercise or off doing something else, and you're expecting them to understand. And so as the leaders on here, you have to talk to those soldiers as well and say, okay, I remember the days where soldiers used to have to come to commanders and ask to get married. I think that must have changed. Because next thing you know, you have somebody coming in and say, hey, now I'm Mrs. or I just got married. I'm like, wait, did anybody sit you down and talk to you about what life in the military is going to be like for your new spouse who's never left home and is literally leaving their mom and dad's house? Do they understand? And so I hate that they took it away because we used to have that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you had to. You want to add anything, babe?
It just, you know, like when Dia would come home, you know, she might had a bad day or something like that. You know, it's not always your job to try to jump in there and try to solve it. Sometimes you just need to be that sounding board, you know, and just sit there and listen and, you know, just see what she has to say, you know, because that's the biggest thing, being able to listen and not try to, you know, do snap judgments and stuff like that. You know, even if she asks, well, what would you do? You know, you just go by your experience. And if she doesn't take that, you need to be willing to accept that. You know, just because you tell somebody something doesn't mean they have to agree with you.
And we always have to remember when somebody gives you a recommendation, it's a way.
That's right.
My old sergeant major sister, she says it's a way. I said it's a way. It's not the wrong way. It's not the right way. It's a way. It's an option you can look at. But talking it out, sometimes I can say something to him. I will talk through an issue before he can even respond to my question. I already figured it out because I needed to hear it come out. Sometimes I just need it. And then when he gives me sound advice, just like first time I said, I didn't think about it that way. You know, hey, that's a great, and it gives you more a span of recommendations that you don't think about. That's why we think mentorship is so important, because not only are we helping to coach you through things that we as the seniors or military have been through, we're giving you possible ideas that you never even would have thought of. Things that you were like, I didn't know I could do that. But most of the time people didn't know they could do it because they never asked. I tell people, just ask. The worst you can get is a no, but you already know you're locked in on a no if you never asked. And so first on, first off, Juana, you want to say anything else? You know you're gonna be my first. That's your first name as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, ma'am. Also one thing that with that, so whenever he transitioned from 11 Bravo to quartermaster, he had the hardest time working with females, and it's because he's like, I don't know, I don't. He's like, I do not know, and I'm just glad I was there to help him navigate through that, because there was times where the females in his platoon knew that he was 11 Bravo prior to, so he has never worked with females, so they were trying to like, you know, kind of like, oh, I have my period, or I have this and I have that, I need to go home. And he will come like, babe, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm at work. I'm doing PT. I'm
Right.
running. I'm rucking. Like, what's the difference between me and your female soldier? So to a point that he actually had to like sit down with his soldiers, with his platoon or his section, I believe at that time, was like, hey, I got it. I'm 11 Bravo. I've never worked with females. Just understand that you will always have that. I will always respect you. I will always gonna take care of you, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna, use me as a crutch because I do not know how to work with you guys.
Well, and that's a great point, because I will just tell you, I had a conversation the other day. We have a new mom. She just had her baby, and the challenging conversation of breastfeeding came up. And the male senior leader didn't know how to approach the issue, because he was like, well, she has to leave. I'm like, well, okay, but did you talk to her? Because if it's breastfeeding, I'll just tell you, you got powdered milk, and then you can also pump. And this is here is our direct dialogue. And you can go pump milk and put it in the freezer and pull it out and go feed the baby. Yeah. Well, ma'am, I don't want to talk to her about that. Well, why not? Well, it just makes me feel uncomfortable. We have to be we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if you look at it as that's your little sister or your daughter or somebody, you have to have that dialogue. And so if you understand that, if the dialogue has to happen, let it be you that makes it happen. Now, if you feel uncomfortable, bring somebody in with you, but make sure you're talking it through, because if that male soldier doesn't do it, he will then create and set a new precedence for men not talking to women and holding. I used to hate when people would come to me and say, hey, look, that soldier, female's hair is all out of place. What did you tell her? Oh, I don't want to go tell her. Is the regulation showing that she is wrong? And this is when we
only males can read it.
Right. And so sure enough, it was like, well, look, how about we go over here together and you tell her that she's wrong? Ma'am, I don't want to upset her. So you don't want to upset her by telling her she's wrong, but you let me go do it. I said, how about we go together? And so we would go together. And this is, peers when I was a major or captain. Many times I was saying, you have to do it, because when you don't do it, you're allowing them to get away. We need to be corrected. There are times we're doing something, you just need to tell me. I got up the next day, one morning, I had the earrings in from my uniform and I was too tired to take them out. I went into PT the next morning with my earrings in I was in PT uniform, and everybody saw me. And then one NCO came and said, hey, ma'am, you got your earrings in. I said, out of all this time I've been standing here, you're the only person that came and said something. I think everybody was scared that I was going to fuss at him for, how dare. I stopped that entire formation. I said, look here, how many of y'all saw my earrings in my ear? And you see the hands going up. Me, I said, and not one of you said anything of that. I was like, well, ma'am, you the colonel. What does that mean? What does that mean? I was wrong, right? Well, we didn't want to, but why not? That's what you need to do. And when I brought the soldier who corrected me up, and I said, look, he showed me I was wrong. He told me, he was polite. He pulled me aside. He said, ma'am, your earrings are in your ear. I literally pulled a coin out of my bag and handed it to him right then. And I showed them doing the right thing doesn't come with the rank. Doing the right thing is the person. Make sure you're doing the right thing. He came back the next day and told me, ma'am, I went home and told my wife that I corrected you. She fussed at him, but why'd you correct the colonel? He said, well, she didn't get mad at me. Well, you're not supposed to do that. I said, tell your wife that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
When you see something that's wrong, fix it. Don't worry about the rank. If a general is walking around and his patch is on backwards, politely pull him aside, sir.
Mhm.
If I can help you, please let me take a moment to help you. Your patch is upside down. I'm here to assist. Because you're making him look good or her look good. Don't let him walk around looking wrong, because now everybody else sees that person. It might not have, my bag rips my patch off sometimes. And if it's crooked, I would hope somebody's going to stop it and fix it for me. You know? You want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, when you walk by a deficiency, you just set a standard. Maybe like what's on up to go, he don't care about nothing. He lets anything slide. It shouldn't be a problem with you being able to say something to somebody. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. As long as you can look at that regulation, because just doesn't say males or females have to read the regulation. Everybody's supposed to read it. So you should be able to interpret it the correct way.
Ladies,
All right,
thank
so
you so much.
now
for
we're going to have some time.
sharing.
Go ahead, Mari. I think it's question and answer time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for everything you guys have said. You actually have taught us a great lesson on leading with empathy versus sympathy. And empathy is because when you need the soldier to do something, you have to ensure that you resource them. I still feel for you. I still understand the challenges that you go through, but we still have a mission to go through. And I actually met First Sergeant Torres when she was still First Sergeant Torres. And I could actually tell you that she's the epitome of personal leadership. She actually was able to tell me something about every one of her soldiers, every one of them, without missing a beat. That to me is truly being a leader that is empathetic and is willing to go the extra mile. And ma'am, thank you so much for letting us see that being vulnerable is not being weak, but it actually being strength. So now we move on to the question and answer period. Sierra, you have the questions.
Good evening. First of all, thank you, ma'am, Colonel PB. Your story with you and your husband has been very enlightening. And for the Torres family, same to you. Both of you have several years under your belt with relationships, and you've gone through so many different trials and tribulations and learned so much. So the question I posed in the chat was, if you can go back and kind of do something over, what would it be? Over.
So I'll start off with that one because it automatically came to mind. I got married in 1992 because my then husband, or then person I was dating, was getting out of the military. And I told him I don't do long distance. He was going back home to Michigan and I was in Fort Ord, California. So was that a good reason to get married because that person was leaving? Well, we lasted 20 years and everybody thinks, well, you lasted 20 years. It must have been great. Well, I won't necessarily say that, but I got married because I'm thinking that's the only thing to do to be with that person. He was getting out of the military. We stayed together, but we hadn't really thought about it because we were young and we hadn't thought about, we didn't know each other enough. We dated for 4 months before I got married because he was leaving. And so we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know each other. We just knew what the concept of marriage was. Now, I will tell you, I am a product of my mother. My mother's had 5 husbands, and I share that with you for a reason. We learn from what we see. And so when I said earlier, more is caught than taught, I made it a point. I will not be like my mom. I'm not going to have 1 million husbands. I'm just not going to do it. So I probably stayed in a relationship 17 years longer than I should have stayed in that 20-year marriage. Y'all do the math. And so I say that because I got married on the idea of marriage, but I didn't understand what I needed to do in that marriage. I didn't understand how the military was going to impact that marriage. I didn't understand what, as a parent at that young age, and I'm talking to the young soldiers in military and civilians that are on here, when you're thinking about it, understand that there's a reason we say time is important. because the more time you spend with someone, the more you learn that person, the more, because the honeymoon phase of any dating is everybody does everything right. Oh, they say all the nice things. The house is clean. Everything is wonderful. And then people start becoming themselves, and then they start showing who they really are. Not that there's a hidden, serial killer or anything. I hope to God, pray to God is not. But you start seeing who they are, the little quirks that you're like, wait a minute, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you chewed that loud. Oh my God, I didn't know you brush your teeth like that. Little stupid things. But it could be I deal with it. I just walk out of the room. No, I'm slaying. But these are the things that you have to realize, that as young couples, you have to talk through and see different things. And young kids are on emotion. I say young kids, but young relationships go on straight emotion and what they see on TV. Young girls coming out of high school, young guys coming out of high school think they see Twilight, the movie, and everything else. But I will tell you, what I would have changed is I would have spent a little bit more time and realized that I shouldn't get married because someone is just leaving. I needed to make sure if it's love, he'd have gone, we'd have been back together. But we have a great relationship. We had a great marriage to certain degrees. And then there were reasons that we didn't have a great marriage. But we later on, going through our divorce, afterwards, we had to sit down and acknowledge my flaws, my own weaknesses, his, because it's not the other person. It's not just that one person. It's both of you. Never think it was somebody else that caused us to break up. Both of you caused yourselves to break up or stay together if you worked it out. So that was my answer. You want to add anything? Or what would you change as young Eric?
So when I was stationed at Fort Lewis, I had like a 75-person platoon, and I was a single parent. So I didn't do a whole lot of delegating. So I did a whole lot of directing instead. And I wish I would have been able to delegate a lot more back then, because I probably would have got a lot more done, because I tried to rely on what my knowledge was and not my 4 squad leaders' knowledge. And if I would have been able to do that over again, I would definitely delegate more and listen more like I do now. Like I said before, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. Even before the words got out their mouth, I was already telling them. So that was something I would change.
Juana, you want to answer that?
I think with mine will be to actually not slow down my career like I did. Being, like you say, you're a product of your mother. I'm product of my culture. As a Hispanic woman, I'm supposed to be home taking care of my kids, taking care of my husband. And I slowed down a lot. Like I literally had to press on the brakes on my career because of the kids and because of my husband. He was a platoon sergeant, he was a section chief, he was a squad leader. So I'm like, you know what? He needs all the help. I'm still doing what I need to be doing, giving up 100% at work, but I don't think I was doing it to my fullest. And I that's one of the things that I would just go back. I'm like, you know what? I should have, I'm going to do airborne. I'm going to go, what is it? What was the other one I wanted to do?
Aerosol.
I wanted to do all of that, but I had, like I said, I had to kind of stop and take care of home, I guess. I think that's one of my biggest regrets. I wish I would have just kept on going, strong steam. I had the leaders that supported me. I had everything, but I was like, I'm gonna take care of my kids. I had 2 miscarriages. Now God bless me with 2 kids. I'm like, let me give them all my attention. So I think that's one of my biggest regrets. I wish I just trailblaze everything like everybody else did.
Arturo?
Ma'am, I don't think I will change. I've been blessed throughout these years. I've done good for myself. I've done good for my family. But it's time for that new chapter for me. And so I'm here to support my wife to the fullest. And like I said, I will not change a bit. And the man up above has helped me a lot, and I'm very grateful for that.
I think he does have one, ma'am, and I think for him, what's the hardest was actually transitioning from 11 Bravo to quartermaster to a Fuel 92 Fox. I think, and I feel bad at times with it. And I tell him too. I'm like, if you would have stayed as 11 Bravo, you would have been a command sergeant major, somewhere. Or at least a minimum of first sergeant. And I'm like, I feel bad because he still loves it. He's still good at everything he did as an 11 Bravo. But now he teaches now his 92 Foxes that he has. But I think that's one of his regrets. I think he somewhere down the line, he's like, I should have just stayed as a 11 Bravo. Am I right, Art?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
A little bit, but I got several friends of mine that we were peers back in 11 Bravo when they're sergeant majors already. And so, it is what it is. But I like I said, yeah.
I think what he's saying is he made the right
choice.
choice because he has you. Mhm,
Yeah.
uh-huh, mhm,
That's a
mhm.
good answer.
That's
No.
right.
Awesome. All right, Sierra, you got another question for us?
Absolutely, ma'am. We have a question from First Lieutenant Briggs. It reads, any tips on how to meet people where they are and getting through them as far as mentoring junior leaders and spouses?
First Sergeant, you want to take that? You all take it first?
Yeah. So what we've done, so when we first got married, we actually had my platoon sergeant, my very first platoon sergeant, he was married, and he became our sort of like our marriage counselors, him and his wife. Because they were at that time, I think they were married for 10 years. Matter of fact, Master Sergeant retired Rogelio Lopez and his wife. And they mentored us throughout our marriage and through our hiccups, through our issues and stuff like that. So my husband and I try to do that now with the ones that had just getting married or thinking they're getting married. With just casually talking and doing it as transparent as you can be. Because at the end of the day, if you're not transparent, you're just putting your front, they're going to notice it. They're not going to be clean with you. They're not going to tell you the truth of what's going on or what they see, what they're planning for the future. And the first thing we ask is, what are you guys going to do? What's your plan? And then we tell them how my husband actually was the one that did the investment for our future with those 20 acres. And at that time it was cheap. And we tell them how investments, buying properties, you're never ready for kids. The kids are always going to come in, and a lot of them like, well, I'm planning to have kids, but I need to be stable. I'm like, kids are going to pop up whenever they, God bless you with them. So we just try to talk to people as soft, especially when the ones that we know they're just getting married too.
So ladies and gentlemen, we are now at 19:02, which is 2 minutes past. So Sierra is going to host us on one last question, and then we're going to call it a night.
Remember 1930.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. We won't take long on these answers. I'm so sorry.
No
Go ahead.
worries, ma'am. We have a question from Miss Claudia Louie. As a couple, how do you differentiate your marriage from the military when you outrank your husband? Over.
So I would really, and I know she knows I'm going to do this. I'm sure she knows I'm about to do that. Matter of fact, both of them probably know I'm going to do this, but I please forgive me, ma'am. But General Gainey, would you mind throwing in some comments? I think you have the perfect story.
So I'm happy to. In fact, I was just typing something. Your marriage is your marriage, and it's a partnership. And you have to treat it that way. When you walk in the door, you've got to take off that rank and be that spouse, because you're together as equals, nothing different. Now, when you see each other outside in the work environment, they've got to salute you. They've got to call you ma'am. You have to be respectful of the rank, because other people are watching. They may not realize you're married. I was a lieutenant general, and my husband was a brigadier. So throughout our whole time, I pretty much outranked him as we were going along. But he said, I salute my wife inside the house and outside the house. That was our little joke. But again, we did treat it as a partnership. But you sometimes forget we would have been married maybe 1 week from the church wedding. We'd actually been married 3 months from a civil service ceremony. And I came in from the motor pool, came into the house, and I started barking orders. And he said, stop right there. turn around, leave. He said, come back in as my spouse, but I don't work for you. So let's try this again. And I said, oh, that's funny. I'm sorry. He goes, no, I'm serious. Go outside, come back in, it's happy. And it just made me realize I have to stop and be Kathy and not back then Colonel Gainey. So it was a very good awakening for me. Hopefully that answers that.
That was awesome, ma'am. And I knew you had it. I was like, yep, I know the first person to answer. General Bingham, ma'am, would you like to answer anything or add anything to this?
No, but Kathy, just know you continue to be my hero and my shero. I have truly enjoyed our friendship and your mentorship of me. I just want to say it's a joy to come on this afternoon, this evening. Eric, you rock. I'm so proud of you as the hubby of Clydea. And so I have embraced you as part of my family as well. And so thank you for all of what you do. Team Torres, you hit it out of the park. And just so grateful for the both of you who continue to do wonderful work. I live just outside of Austin, Texas. So maybe when you guys get to Texas, we can break bread sometime. I'm grateful for my spouse of almost 39 years. Kathy, that was such a funny story, but I definitely have gone through that, not because my husband wore the uniform beyond 10 years of our marriage, but just because sometimes you forget you're still in work mode when you come home. So you've got that, I don't know, adrenaline that makes you say and do things more on the military side of the house than the kind of calmer state as the spouse. And so I've thought about a couple funny instances as you reminded us of what happened between you and your beau. So continue good fortune to everybody. Dee, congratulations on your change of command this afternoon or this morning. And best of luck at Army Materiel Command. And just as we approach Memorial Day, just remember our fallen comrades and their families. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You're awesome. Both of you are awesome, always. And the Torres family, she really does mean it. Don't think she doesn't mean it. Reach out. I will reach out to you, give you her information so she can, both of them, that's why I get to call on them all the time, because they were the ones that shaped little old lieutenant all the way up to where I am today. So thank you so much, ladies. That was wonderful. Go ahead, Mari.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. And if you would like, we can have another question then. Ciara, you on for your next question?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm looking through the chat. I don't see a specific question, but I did have a question personally. It really tied into the communication aspect of what both of you discussed. I was going through your relationships, and General Tyre Bingham actually hit it in the park. You have to separate it. Same thing with General Gainey. You have to separate the uniform between when you get home and so on and so forth. So what are some kind of lessons learned, on how to do that? Do you take that 5-minute pause in the car before you go in to kind of decompress, or is it really just a flip of a switch, or what are some kind of lessons learned that you've done that with? Because I'm going through the same situation. As you can see, I'm still in uniform, but I'm at home and we're having, civil conversations. And so how do you flip that switch, and what are some lessons learned with that? Over.
I think with me, and when my husband gets home before I do, before he even picks up the baby, he stays home, relaxes, just changes his uniform, and just kind of decompresses before he picks up the baby and before the other kids get in the house. What I do is when I get home, I say hi to everybody. I'm like, look, mommy needs 20 minutes of alone time, especially if I had a rough day or a long day. I'll go upstairs to my room, take off my uniform, just lay there, either in the carpet or in my bed, just think about the day. And then 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, I'm good. I go downstairs, cook dinner. That's the way I do it. Or I just stay in the car, listen to the music, or even to the gospel radio coming home, just to decompress before I even get home. Because my kids don't understand the stressors and everything. So I just don't want to come home and be like, da, 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 which I've done a couple of times. And like General Gainey said, my husband did the same thing. He's like, well, turn around, go back outside, sit in the car, listen to your music or whatever, and just come back in. But I had to learn that. I have to say hi to everybody, go upstairs, change, get out of the uniform. Get out of the uniform. Because at the end of the day, you're home, you're mom, or you're the wife, or your spouse. Get out of that uniform. Because at the end of the day, underneath that uniform, you're a person, you're that mom, you're that spouse. And that's how I had to do it. And I had to learn the hard way, because there was times that my kids would be like, oh, what's wrong, mom? But change your clothes, take off that uniform, take it off. Unless you're going back to work, obviously, but take it off.
Well, and I completely agree with that. I will tell you, I learned from my sister a while back. I used to fuss at her. She would come home because we lived together for a while I was going through my divorce. I stayed, my two kids lived with her in DC because I was like, I need a support system. I'm doing this all by myself and I've got little kids. And so she would always sit in the car and it would take her forever to get in the house. And I'm like, what is she doing? Why, like 20 minutes, I'm putting dinner on the table. I'm like, why is she still out in the car? Well, she was getting the last bit of work done in the car so that when she hung up the phone, she could come in the house and say, okay, I'm not going to talk about work. So I started doing that late, I understood it. I was like, okay, got it. So the last conversations I need to have in the car. Now, being in command, it just wasn't able. Sometimes you just couldn't do that. But as soon as I was walking in the door, I might be in the middle of a conversation, trying to get home, rushing and doing something. And he would see me and I'm like, okay, let me run to the bathroom and finish my conversation or hide somewhere so that I'm not bringing it into the room, especially if it's not a great conversation. Go somewhere else, get done, change clothes. Now, I will admit, I have gone through the entire evening fully dressed in uniform, but that meant I came home, I cooked dinner, I did, because it was like, oh, look, I don't have time. I don't even have time to run upstairs, change clothes, and do anything because they need food, they need this. And then one day, Eric looked at me, he's like, why do you do that? I was like, why do I do what? He said, you come right in, you put your stuff down and you start cleaning and cooking and getting everything right. I said, because you guys need to eat. He said, why don't you just ask me to cook? I'm like, the thought of that. And he's like, you do know I can cook. You do marry, you married me because I could cook also, right? I said, yeah. He said, all you gotta do is just tell me which one. I was like, I was taking on a burden that I thought I needed to do to keep the house going. But I had to remember I have a partner there. I just have to be okay with asking. So now when I was full speed ahead, he would call me and say, hey babe, what do you want for dinner? Because he knew I was probably gonna come home thinking I gotta do it all. He said, what do you want for dinner? I was like, oh, I don't know. He said, okay, well, are you okay with? Yes, that sounds great. Now I tell people, I'm gonna just advise you all right now. If somebody asks you what you want for dinner and you say, I don't care, then truly don't care. Don't be mad if they cook something you don't want to eat it. Don't say, I don't care, you cook it, whatever you want. And then next thing you know, it's something that you really didn't want. That could cause an argument. Because if you're like, well, what do you want? It's up to you. And then they cook spaghetti and you're like, oh, I don't feel like spaghetti. Well, you said you didn't matter. So I say that to say it's communication. And so he communicated with me that he was here as my partner when I'm like full speed ahead and not even thinking about it. I was adding stresses to my own life. So with you, I would say, same thing they said. Sometimes decompress in the car. I call my sister often now. So everybody knows my sister's a lieutenant colonel. Sometimes I just need to call her and see what's going on in her life so that I can say, oh, I thought I had a baby girl. I get it. Okay, I feel better now. I see what you're going through. And then I go in the house and we just talk through stuff. But also I come in the house. I just want to hear what he has to say. How was your day? What did you do today? Take my mind off of whatever I'm dealing with, because right now I just don't want to even think about the soldier that did something or the sharp incident that happened or whatever. I want to hear something else that takes my mind off of it. And then make sure you have date night. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Did that help, Ciara?
Absolutely, ma'am. You really kind of sealed the deal on some other advice that I've gotten. So I do appreciate that. And same thing with the Torres family. You really just have to, break free and, understand the separation is real.
Yes, yes.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me thank Colonel PB and Eric for giving us a little hypnosis of their life, their daily life. Thank you so much to the Torres family. And we truly do appreciate every trailblazer that is on this call, General Gainey, General Bingham, and General Simile, for allowing us to continue and open doors for the better of the Army and of the United States, to continue open doors and allow talent to reach the top. Thank you so
I
much.
think we have a question from, let me just throw out there who we'll also have on the line. Mr. Mark Bitten is the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army for San Francisco, and his hand is raised. Hey, Mr. Bitten.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I just want to, if I may, I don't have a question. I just have a few comments. I've been listening and with the conversation. I think this is absolutely outstanding. Thank you, Brown family and Torres family team, for sharing, because having the right foundation is so important. You know, whether you're in the military or not, foundation, and I think, Colonel, you mentioned it, about I'm married too soon, or I'm married for the wrong reason. It goes back to having the right foundation. How many times have you heard service members say, I need to get out because my old lady this or my old man that? Well, I'm always deployed and he's this and she's that. And then they get out and 2 or 3 years later, they're divorced anyway. How many, if you don't have the right foundation in or out of the military, it's going to be an issue. There are people who live together every day and can't stand each other. Okay. So we all got to have the right foundation. And my last comment is thank you all so much for that transparency. And just listening to comments of transparency, like having a mother of 5 husbands, marriage counseling, infertility, miscarriages. Those are very sensitive issues. And when you have service members hear these kinds of challenges, and to hear that life is not so perfect among the senior leadership, it strengthens us. It's great to go out saying I got a nice car, a nice house, everything's great. But what about, hey, my kids were bad. I had to be in that principal's office every day. Really? And they see you look good and smell good, but what's really going on behind, right? Mm-hmm. So transparency is strengthening. And I'll leave you with this. One of my favorite verses that I think this whole conversation came under was a verse called under Luke 22, verse 31. And Jesus talks about how he says, Simon, Satan is asking for you to sift you like wheat, right? Remember back in the grandma used to take that sifter and sift the flour to sift you like wheat and shake you and rattle you up. But my prayer for you is not that you don't get sifted, because that's what I thought I was going to say next. My prayer for you is that your faith don't fail. And when you come out of that, go back and strengthen thy brother. Go back and strengthen our brother and sister. And Brown family and Torres family, this conversation has strengthened our brothers and sisters. So how do you strengthen our brothers and sisters? Just what you did. Transparency. Transparency and sharing those backstories that we don't hear about, and particularly from our senior leaders. That is so, so important. So thank you so much. As I listen, I just like, boy, what a conversation of strengthening our brothers and our sisters, by just transparency. Sometimes it's hard. We want to hide those. Don't keep that. There's a reason that God still have us here to share those stories, right? So thank you for being open and honest and having that transparency, and that it's okay not to be okay. All right. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. And I saw General McSimile just jump on. Sir, would you like to add a few more comments?
Thanks, Clandia, and congratulations again on your completion of Brigade Command today. Very great example of your service and dedication that you're on with us tonight. You could easily be doing other things, but you have been all in on this program and on mentoring in general. throughout your career and throughout your tenure in Brigade Command as you created this program here. And so I think it's exceptional that you're joining us this evening as well. And I have been listening to all the conversation and really appreciate the example that you and Eric shared of challenges that you've faced and overcome and continue to face and overcome. And the same with the Torres family. And I really appreciate the dialogue overall. And I have to say, it really gets at the root and the purpose of mentoring. And so as mentors, we have a responsibility to share the practical advice that's helpful for those that are in need and to share the benefit of our experience and to reveal that we all are subject to the human condition, that the challenges that we face are common, and that it's the community that allows us to overcome those. And by being open and transparent with each other, we can share our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities and how we've overcome them with the help of others primarily. And so this practical advice that we've heard today that highlights the fact that the military profession is subject to the challenges of the human condition, and that all leaders, every service member who puts on the uniform has these challenges and has, some of us developed the means to overcome them. And some of them, so we can coach others on how others may do it as well. That's part of our responsibility. A forum like this allows us the opportunity to have these frank conversations, I think is invaluable. So my thanks to you, and my thanks to the entire team, and of course, my thanks to everybody who's on this net today for the opportunity to learn from each other. I'm very grateful. So thank you. Good evening.
So much, sir. Really appreciate that. Awesome. All right, Mari.
Good thing that we didn't cut out because we would have missed some tremendous comments. And great point that General Simile gave us is out of adversity comes wisdom, which is our responsibility and our duty to share the wisdom that we get through our adversity. And thank you guys for doing that. Today, one of the lieutenants came from Bolek and approached me and said that I did not know how empowering is to hear that we are human. That we are human and we too have air and we too have fix. And thank you so much. I'm gonna go read my Bible after the comment because that was an amazing verse to remind us. So ma'am, I'll let you have the last word. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Mari, for stepping in. And as you all know, I did change command today. Thank you so much. Praise God. Amen. And I am going to be heading down we are going to be heading down to Alabama. Doesn't mean anything other than the background's going to change for you all because we're still going to be on here every month. But what we're doing is we're making sure we're grooming the executive board because they're going to be doing the same things as in speaking here. But I also like to let you know that the U.S. Army Cadet Command, Major General Davis, Johnny Davis, just sent up a note to General Funk today about the FMMP. My sister and myself, and I believe Mara and a few of the other ladies are going to be going to summer training to speak to 3 different sessions of cadets. When they come together and converge on the cadet summer training, they would like us to speak to the different ones. So the FMMP is moving and shaking. We are officially under the Women's Initiative Team, TRADOC, led by General Gervais, and they are working with the Women's Initiative Team Army as they're getting off the ground. But we are nested within the WIT TRADOC and working to put that charter together with them as the main platform for discussions that come from the field, come from the units, and then provides that information and feedback to the WIT to affect policy and change. So those of you that know about the postpartum, the pregnancy PT new regulation that came out, a new policy came out, that came out of the work of the WIT and the number of people that are working within the WIT. And so just wanted to bring that good news story to you and all the things that are happening out here. And I know we have those that are signed in, and then we have the virtual. So we've got the number of personnel that are actually streaming live on Facebook as well. So just thank you so much for everything you all are doing. Thank you for those that made the ceremony or those that dialed in and could see the ceremony. It was an emotional moment for us to say goodbye. And anything I tell people, and I told the team last night, most people assume that when you see tears, it's a sign of weakness. No, Tears are a sign of love, passion, compassion, and sadness if they're leaving, happiness when they're coming. But it means we care and it comes from the heart. So I thank you all for being a part of this journey with me, with Eric, with the executive board. General Assembly, thank you so much for all your support. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, I think we've had a successful evening of just bringing love to you and sharing our experience and knowledge. So thank you again for joining in. He gets a cupcake tonight too, by the way. Chocolate with sprinkles on it.
Yes.
Ma'am,